everybody. So
Hello.
excited to see you all. This is a really big deal for us to have you all here. We're here talking about something we love so much. To see that all you guys give a shit makes me really, really happy. So it's really cool. I want to ask really quick, this is my third chapter in talks. Who has come into my previous 2 talks in the last 2 years? Oh my God, 4 people, 10. Okay, great.
That's a good amount.
You guys get a special prize. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for being here. So welcome to our dynamic dialogue, the Game Designer's Guide to Voice Recording. We're very excited to be here. I'm told to give you a couple little notes. A, please turn off your noisemakers, also known as cell phones. Apparently there's going to be a survey sent to you at the end. Hopefully you like what we're talking about. If you don't, you can tell us that too. We learn from everything you tell us. And thirdly, our goal is to have time for Q&A at the end. If we run a little bit short, we really want to make sure we make ourselves available to you. So we'll either linger about here or go outside. But we want to make sure we talk to anybody and everybody who has a question. So we'll try to make time for that. But no, we really want to give you as much information today as we can. Okay? So with that, I think we'll start. What do you say, guys?
Sounds good.
Let's do it.
All right, slide number 1. I wanted to talk briefly about why I'm here today with my 2 great friends. For those of you who have not been part of my journey for the voiceover pipeline at GDC, it started in 2016. I gave a talk with an actor, D. Bradley Baker, and at that point, our goal was to talk to devs like yourself and let them know what actors need from the actor perspective during voice recording. So we kind of focused on that. Last year, I gave a 2-day workshop all about the voiceover pipeline, kind of from the directing perspective. I know a lot of game companies obviously aren't as big as Blizzard, and so my goal was to help people on small and medium-sized game companies work with talent and direct them yourselves, and so that you're kind of more fluid working with voice actors. So that was last year. This year, I'm very excited because this is going to be focused on the game designer perspective. This kind of angle occurred to me because quite often I have new game designers at Blizzard, and they get recruited for voice sessions, and they show up, and I can see the deer caught in the headlights look because they wrote the lines, but they don't know what's expected of them, what to do, how to talk, and who to be. So I really realized that in order to really give you a very robust experience of the voiceover pipeline, that I want to talk about what the game designer needs to kind of do and bring with them when they come to sessions. So that's going to be our angle today. What does a game designer, how do they fit into the mosaic that is voice recording? So with that, I'm going to introduce my great team. My name is Andrea Toyias. I'm the Senior Casting and Voice Director at Blizzard. My job is to cast and direct every single voice you hear in our games. With me, I've got 2 of my literally favorite people at Blizzard who were kind enough to come. I've got Steve Danuser at the end, Senior Narrative Designer on World of Warcraft, and my good friend Justin Dye, who is a lead writer on Heroes and StarCraft, actually. So Andrea, Steve, and Justin. So the first thing we want to talk about is what we would call the holy trinity of recording. That's going to be our step 1. But I think we can speak to this quickly ahead of time. We understand that we work at Blizzard. We understand what a Blizzard budget is. And we know that not all of you have the same kind of budget we do. So our goal today is to talk about the pieces of what you need. And then depending on your budget and your team, you can kind of mix and match how you see fit and what works for you. So I'm not saying you've got to do it by our rules. Rather, this is what we found works best, and whatever you want to take from this and make it your own is our goal, right, guys? I mean, that's kind of what we always talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing we're going to go over here right now, I treat them more like roles. We're going to use very specific terms like designer, director, actor, but in general, think of them more of it as roles that people take on during the recording session, and we'll kind of go through it a little bit and give a little bit more detail.
Yeah. And also, versus being a formal panel of us lecturing bullet points, my goal is to kind of make this our living room and kind of make it a round table with the 3 of us and kind of talk candidly with you about our experiences, to kind of, like we're all having coffee right now or something. So we're going to make it kind of really organic and fluid and just kind of chat with you a bit.
Can we get some coffee up here, please?
Yeah. Anything.
And for everyone.
And for everyone,
audience,
stat. So holy trinity of voice recording, we feel firmly that the best way to approach voice recording is to have 3 different active members of the session. The first is the designer, which is keeper of world, meaning, anybody?
Yeah, so as the designer, you come in with we'll get into the kind of 3 levels of story that we have in mind, but we're really representing what the game needs, what the session, the practical use of the session is, and we're helping guide the actor towards the goal of bringing this character to life.
Right.
Yeah, in general, the designers goal in the session is to keep context in mind. They're usually the only person in the room that has any idea where the thing is actually going to be playing at the given moment inside the game. So having that knowledge in the booth is paramount, because the other two are going to be focused more on performance angles.
Right. Right. So that's the designer, very, very key. The designer then talks to myself, the director, or if one of you are directing, whoever has the role of director, it's my job. You know, I know about our games, but I don't know every nuance and small detail. I'm in the session to track the performance. Is this performance right? How is the acting? Is it the right emotion? Are we telling our story? Are we being true and honest? So I'm there, you know, Justin or Steve are next to me focusing on the game. I'm focusing on the performance. And obviously the third member of the equation is the actor. They're keeper of the character. They're on our front lines bringing our character to life. So for our perspective, I know budgets are tough. We're not saying they're not, but an ideal scenario would be to at least have these roles in every recording session that you do when possible.
In general, one thing I'd like to stress as well is that all three of these are pretty useful, and when you see games that you try to get maybe one person to do both the designer and the director angle, you'll end up having a sort of two-brain scenario where part of you is focusing on the performance and another part is trying to handle line reads, length, context. And these two will fight against each other. You might be so busy focusing on, like, is that sad enough, that you actually can't focus on the fact that maybe 4 of those adjectives need to be cut from the line or whatever. So in general, even if you have a smaller studio and you're unable to have, say, a director or something, having someone step into the role of director and then bring in another person to handle the line notes, the read, that is incredibly useful.
Right, I agree. So great. So this is a really important thing. So I know, like I said, some of my new designers, they patch into the session and I say to them, okay, let's talk about the game, or what do you think about that line read, or the actor's read? And they're like, fine, because they don't know, and bless them, it's overwhelming, you know, and actors are a lot of energy. I'm a lot of energy. So when you go to sessions, you're blinded, you don't know what's happening. So I'm going to kind of break down, if you're going to direct some actors or work with some actors, the kind of things you need to be thinking about. You know, why is the game designer important? And we kind of broke it down to the game designer brings the small, medium, large focus of the game. And we're going to break that down right now. The wide view, the wide angle lens is the vision of the game. That's the big picture.
Yeah, so on a game like World of Warcraft, we have this big, massive world with all this history, all these characters, all these pieces. And what we want to do is energize the actor and get them to understand where their character is going to fit in that. And so I start by kind of taking the really mile-high view of the world and, you know, still thinking about what's going to be relevant for this character, because, you know, I could talk for hours about all the history of the world and all this kind of stuff. But start with some big picture pieces that are going to be relevant to this actor. So if the actor is going to play a certain orc in the game, for example, I might start talking about, you know, a little bit about where the orcs came from and kind of what they're about, what their big place in the world is, what they've been striving for. And then we kind of drill down one layer more. So what's going on in the immediate area, whether it's the new action that's going to be coming in this new expansion that we're doing, or if it's kind of the territories around where this character lives, what are the conflicts and other people going on that are most relevant to this character? And then finally drilling down to the character itself. You know, now that I've explained what an orc is and what the orc's place in the world is, how does this character stand out from that? What drives them? What makes them different? How does what this character need to do plug into those bigger pieces? So hopefully by starting with this big focus and getting progressively narrower, it's letting the actor kind of connect the dots of what's going to be important about the story.
And that really helps.
Yeah, I would say that it's giving the actor a lot of tools that they can use for their performance. Additionally, not every game's an MMO. Not everything will have such giant sweeping worlds or whatever. But you may also scale this to, say, for example, your campaign or your storyline might be the large size. Smaller could be just the person's faction or what they're doing, where they're from, and then down all the way to the character, where they are in the world at a given moment.
Like for Heroes is obviously much different. So your big picture is, okay, you're with your team, you're fighting, how
Heroes is crazy. Let's go with StarCraft. But with StarCraft, for example, we might do something like, say, the entire campaign, then bring it down to, hey, the Protoss are doing this. Even maybe going, hey, your faction of Protoss does so on, and here's who you are and what you're doing.
The key, I think, is, especially when you have a big world, lots of stuff going on, is not to get hung up on the minutia. Because it would be super easy to just go on and, oh, that was the one time this character did this. Like, keep it relevant to what this performance is going to be about. give enough of those big picture things so that they can, oh, I get it. I understand what war is. I understand what conflict is. I can kind of drill down as an actor and see what is going to be relevant for this character and not let them get hung up on too many little details.
Yeah. I mean, like for Overwatch even, we talk about our vision for the game, the overarching themes for the game. Then we talk about the fight with Talon and Overwatch, and then what's going on with Reinhardt. It's small, medium, large. However you want to do it, however it works for your game, whatever that means to you. But before you go to a session, just kind of think about before you go, what are some kind of big themes I can talk about for the small, medium, large angle?
And more than just communicating, it's remembering that this is what you're bringing to the session, is this knowledge.
Yes.
This knowledge is not necessarily held by the actors, it's not necessarily held by the person who's directing either. But as the designer, this is the stuff that you have that allows them to get that level of character and detail.
That's right. Great. So you've been thinking about that. Now it's time to prep for a session. So, have a starting point for what you want to hear. I think when I work with new designers, I can hear it in their voice that they've been spending so much time writing that when they get to session, they haven't really thought about what they want from the character, the sound, or anything. And I could feel when we try things, that's when I get that response of, like, hey, what do you think? Yeah, it's good. And it's not their fault. At Blizzard's working 12 hours a day, it's a lot of work, so they haven't thought about it. So with this slide, we want to kind of focus on things to think about how to prepare for your session. Point number 1, know the function the character serves in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. This is that simple thing of like, what are you recording? Is it a boss? Is it an NPC? Is this a primary character? Just knowing those things, you will come in with different goals.
Right.
So for example, a player character, most of the time in our games, we end up having our player characters have their dialogue a little bit more subdued. And the reason for that is because you will hear that line like 1,000 times.
Right.
If it is too expressive, especially on something like, I need more energy, or something like that, like if you get too expressive on it, immediately you can recognize the variant and immediately go, oh, it's that one, or it drives you crazy, or whatever. So you try to make sure those blend. And that's a specific thing for a player character. We don't do that necessarily for bosses or NPCs and so on.
Yeah, exactly. Like for the player character, we don't want it to tug your ear, but for a boss, we want those memorable lines, like something in the voice that makes you go, oh, holy crap, that guy's awesome.
Yes.
The crazy robot who's annihilating people. Like that's the memorable stuff that really gets people engaged, and somebody makes it into a techno remix meme, and it's awesome.
Of course. But it's good to know that. If you know, okay, this is a big boss, go into it going, okay, when you talk to the director or the actor, this has got to be big and bombastic and ridiculous, or, subdued and simple, or,
Or even
whatever.
just like this line has to be able to be heard over combat.
Yes,
It's a good
absolutely.
thing to know in your brain
Right.
when you're going to the session prior.
Sure. Next point is, this is what we kind of call know your hard and soft beats. What I mean by that is hard beats. Male, 50s, soldier, gruff voice, texture. Okay? Just know what you want the sound to sound like. But then know the soft beats. Soldier 76, he's angry, he's disillusioned with the world, he's got a vendetta. Kind of know some emotional beats about him. And when the actor at the very least gets the hard beats, what he should sound like, and just a kind of basic kind of gist of the character's emotional landscape, I think those two together really give that character some clay to work with. I think, Steve, on our WoW sessions, we're deep in WoW right now. We kind of always sprinkle a little bit of this for each and every character that we do.
Yeah, that's one of the nice things about having such a rich tapestry to draw from, is that we want our characters in the game to have those emotional strings that make them different from one another. You can, if you're a WoW player, you can think about stuff that happened in Legion. Example, there's a character called Runus in Azuna, and you kind of went along with him, and at first he's kind of funny, and you're collecting some mana crystals, and he's making jokes about it. He's this withered guy, though, and he's been deprived of mana, and it's literally withering his body, and his mind is rotting away, and you kind of go on some adventures with him. By the end of it, he loses his mind, and he kind of fades away and says goodbye to you. And it's that kind of emotional journey that we want to bring. And giving those actors those actables, those soft beats, really helps them pull out something amazing in those performances.
Right. Because I think, for example, if you're going to say, okay, Soldier 76, he's angry. That, so many of us have a different idea of what angry is, so that doesn't necessarily strike the same chord with everybody. This is not Soldier 76's backstory, but for example, this character is angry because his entire family was killed by the other faction. That's all. We can all kind of relate as humans to that anger. So the more specific you make it, the more they can react. Because saying angry or louder, why is he loud? So the more you can kind of give them some meat to understand the world, the better it's going to be.
Yeah, understanding the character's personality and then also a few flaws is really helpful.
I'll go to my next point, which is the heart of your character.
Yeah, so in general, understanding these things, all characters are going to scale in complexity. The honest truth is if you have a guard, he probably does not need to have an incredible amount of depth to him, especially if all he's saying is like, run! Like, yeah, obviously, that's probably not too big of a concern. But in general, you want to still understand that character and why he's there. All NPCs are characters, even if they're just simple one-liners. We still treat them with the same respect. And in general, we want to at least get across, like, this guy is telling you to run because his family is in danger, or whatever it is. Even if it's a simple, single personality trait, we like to give it to at least those characters so something shines through in that line. And then obviously, as you get bigger, it gets more complex, and you want to have more things revealed.
Yeah.
But as she said, things like going in with anger, not extremely helpful, but like anger because I failed. That's way more interesting and gives someone more room to play with.
Absolutely. One little trick of the trade, those who've taken my last two talks, I use this a lot for actors in the booth or even when I'm doing casting. A real quick thing I'll do is I will ask myself two questions for a character. What's the character's biggest fear and biggest dream? You could just make it up. But if you have that, that gives you yourself some anchor points. Soldier 76's biggest fear is that evil consumes the world. His biggest dream is that there's peace everywhere. I mean, you can make up whatever you want. But the whole point is you have anchor points. And I think what we're talking about, and you guys can weigh in on this, the more you know what you want and you have those anchor points, when you're in session, and let's say it starts going in the wrong direction or you're not getting what you want, it helps keep your, I call it the due north. True north. Helps you keep your true north, because when you're in session, it's easy to go, I don't know, they're all great. I don't know about this direction. But the more work you do on prepping for your session and knowing who your character is, biggest fear, biggest dream, that gives you basically an emotional compass for your character to guide you.
Yeah. And a lot of the things to remember is also the script is going to handle a lot of the detail of those things. What we're talking about is emotional beats in the acting, right? So like, even if it's something where, yeah, the dream that she mentioned may not be exactly right, it's something for the actor to glom onto in the session, which allows the rest to be expressed. You can then continue to tweak the lines, do re-records, do whatever you need as a designer. But you want that thing for the actor to go, oh, I understand where this line's going and how I should feel about it.
Yep. And which we'll talk about now, is setting the stage for your session. It's a perfect segue for this next slide, because when I work with actors, when all three of us go, I know that we all work hard to what you're going to be doing is presenting the actor with what I would call like a toolbox or a box of crayons. The more little colors of crayons you put into their toolbox for them to color with, the more they're going to do some amazing colorings and drawings, and they're going to have so much more to work with. Saying you're a gruff, angry soldier, that's great, but you say, your family was killed, you're on a vendetta, that's like suddenly all different kinds of colors come to life. So with that, a lot of you probably know this, forgive us if you already do, but it's really important if they did audition to have that audition with you. Because, that just reminds them, Steve and I always talk about this, they've auditioned for 100 things a day. Yeah. They're not going to remember what they did.
Yeah, and there's something in that audition that made you choose them, right? There's some little spark. And so you both need to hear that again so that you can remember what that is.
Right.
So that can be the thing you focus on. And it gives you at least a starting point, because that's the thing you really wanted. That's a piece to build on. And if the actor knows that and you know it and the director knows it, then you all can work together to lay that foundation and build from there.
That's right. Again, the true north. I think it's probably going to be a reoccurring theme. Always have know where you're going, know what your destination is. Great. If you don't have an audition, we always do this. We always play vocal sample of what the race, other characters of that race sound like. We will look everywhere. We've played YouTube clips. We do whatever we need to give them an idea of the sound will really help them and give them yet another color for their crayon box.
Yeah, totally. It's that ability, giving the actor at least some leg up to understand where they're going to fit in the overall structure of the game, or just within their own group. Right. They will usually find some piece that is new. They're going to bring something new to it themselves, but it is also good to hear what other people are doing in the game.
Right.
Yeah, and there will be times where you're making something new out of whole cloth.
Yeah.
It's a new kind of race you haven't had in your game before, some new enemy type, whatever it is. To have those examples, like in your mind when you're writing for these characters, to think, it kind of reminds me of a Cylon from
Yes.
Battlestar Galactica.
Great.
Okay, put that in there. Show a little clip of that. Show talk about what it is about a Cylon, because you can't just copy one, right? But there's something in there.
And what you liked about the Cylon.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's a starting point, something to build from.
Yeah. And sometimes my team will say, let's do it like, God, let's just say this is an obvious one, but like James Earl Jones or something. But it's giving a celebrity name is one thing, but all these actors play different movies, different characters. Which movie, which character, and why do you like it? Be specific. I mean, I think another theme today is be specific. Just saying, I love Ewan McGregor. Okay. But, what did you like him in? And for all those. So the more specific you can be, the better.
Yeah.
Great. Any and all artwork of character, race, location. My favorite example of this is Hearthstone. When we work on Hearthstone, there's not a lot of, I can't do biggest fear, biggest dream for our 3-line cards. But what I do is I just show the card art. That's all I have to do. That's my easiest directing, because those actors see that image like, oh, fuck, yeah, I got this, man. That's like a talking spoon. I know exactly what I'm going to do. One time, this happens. There was a character, I forget his name. I want to say Reno Jackson, and the character has got this ridiculous Magnum PI mustache, and the actor's like, "Fuck yeah, I just see the mustache. That tells me everything." So artwork of any kind, Also, if you can't show artwork because everything's always top secret, then I always look for images on the web of anything else that inspires me to give an idea.
I was going to say the artwork absolutely can be inspirational, even if it's not something that you have yet. It's something that's like, well, this is close enough. This is something that's in the realm. Again, it's that giving them something to glom onto. You'll see a lot of actors talk about things like knowing if a character has giant tusks. That will allow them to put something in the performance to handle the giant tusks in their mouth or something like that, right?
Stop auditioning.
I can hire me later.
Again, you're not playing an orc.
Regardless.
The next expansion. I'm sorry.
I will. But regardless, having this stuff allows the actor, it's an extra tool. And also, it helps it feel more genuine, because the truth is other actors later will also probably be glomming onto the same detail, and they'll all sort of come from the same place.
Yeah. So again, it's filling, that crayon box with as many crayons. We've used music before. We've used everything you can think of. So you can't give the actors too much creative clay. So feel free to fill that toolbox. Yeah. And lastly, we don't always do this, but when we can, gameplay footage. That just does everything. One thing we're doing right now in WoW is we just show them, we've got some kind of sweeping camera angles of the world our new races are going into. And oftentimes seeing the architecture, seeing the buildings, seeing how the characters walk through the area, how their character walks, really, especially as an orc, for example. That tells them a lot. So whatever you can do. If you have none of this, fine. Just bring your thoughts. But if you can gather some of these, it's going to make your session a lot better.
I'll also say that particular one, super helpful, especially if you're doing something with animations and you've made your character super flirty. It's like, it's good to know that character's super flirty, or this character's super strong, whatever. An excellent one also is like, if you're doing something that's a little out of the board, like an announcer or something, it can be very, very beneficial to have physical gameplay so they know what they're talking about. Especially if your announcer is not necessarily an actor. Maybe you've pulled someone in who is actually an announcer or a streamer or something like that. In general, a lot of those people don't necessarily know how to act in general, but you can provide them gameplay that allows them to react to the thing like they would in their natural environment, and you get something that's workable.
Right.
So in general, gameplay is super useful, and if you need to, if you have a very specific need, I would try your best to get it.
Sure. Great. Perfect. So you've thought about the small, medium, large focus. You've gathered all your assets, and now you're at the recording session. And this is when it all comes together. We're going to talk now. You're there. In theory, again, however your formula breaks out, but the actor, director, and yourself. The number one thing that I tell people when they're going to work with actors is start with a conversation. I always say directing starts with hello. So even as a game designer, they come into the room, hey man, nice to meet you. What's going on? How was your drive? Just chit chat, because this person's not an asset. We're not running a VO sweatshop, they're people and they're your collaborator. So we always, Steve and I spend, I think with you too, Justin, we chat. We just shoot the shit for a while and kind of talk and get to know each other. So the minute you start talking to them, because you want them to trust you and kind of believe that you know what you're doing and they're going to follow you on a journey. So you start with a conversation. So you get to know them, but then you start talking about the game. Yeah. And especially, again, because Steve and I are he's like my daytime spouse right now, for God's sake.
That
You're
makes me
lucky
uncomfortable.
Lucky you, Steve. He's so grateful. But the point is, we've been deep in recording, and we always go, okay, Steve, hey, this is an actor, Steve. Let's talk about our character in the world.
Yeah, and it's one thing if it's an actor where you worked with before. Many times we bring actors back all the time for a while. If it's a character they've played before, they just need a little bit of reference and a little context. Hey, what's going on with Lady Leandra in this expansion, and that kind of thing we can talk about. But especially when it's a new character in a new environment, someone we haven't worked with before, we really take a lot of time. Just a couple weeks ago, we had cast a pretty important character in the world, and we spent a good half hour just sitting and talking about it. And it was a villain, and she does very, wow, villain things. She's gonna mustache twirl, and she's gonna tell the players how crappy they are and all these kinds of things. But in this case, her kind of rage, the thing that made her a villain, came from a very emotional place. She had lost her husband in this battle, and she blamed the royal family that kind of led to his death. And so she's had this long simmering vendetta against them. We talked about that, and we talked about how she'd been this noblewoman. She had this tragedy happen to her, and that fueled her need for revenge, this drive that's been this long game that she's played out. And all that really informs the actor, because even though this story is something new to them, those are themes they've heard before. Those are things that they're familiar with from other movies and genres. And so they were able to pull that together, and by talking it through, we really landed in an awesome performance.
She was amazing.
Character.
And also what I like when I work with these guys in particular, I love when they talk to the actor, because I'm the director, I'm there to help the actor. But as you see, even Steve with all his crazy hands, it really shows your passion, though. What they're really going to hear above the details you're giving them is how much you love this character, you love this game, and that's going to it's like we're kids, right, in a sandbox, and they're going to get excited. So I think just hearing you talk about the work that you've been doing makes them really happy.
Yeah, if you sit there and say, the World of Warcraft is a very ancient story, like that's not going to fire them up. You want to get them excited, like they've come to the session, they're ready to work, but you want them to feel inspired. You want that spark, because that spark is going to translate into the character that they're voicing. And so that's why I try to give this real high energy. And again, I'm starting with these big things, but I'm drilling down and then kind of handing them this clay. And we all jump in the sandbox and we start playing with it and throwing mud balls at each other. And that's where the magic starts to happen.
Magic.
Yeah, the thing is, the actor's there to build the story with you. So and they have to do so in a very short amount of time. It's something like 4 hours usually. So in general, anything you can do to bring in your passion and give it to the actor and make it their passion, immediately it has tangible benefits, and they'll just start tearing apart the character and get really into it. Especially, it's a sort of our crash course of a table read, right? Since we don't really get that in the industry, we don't have time for you to marinate or even rehearse, really. This is our way to do it, is kind of just go through the story with them, tell them where they're going to go, and then they can help plot that out emotionally as they go forward.
Right. But the hard part about this is you really need to try to keep it simple. It's because there's so much. I mean, God, when we try to distill World of Warcraft into bullet points, it's rough. But I think one of you guys said when we were working on this presentation, think about it like if you had to explain, not Star Wars, but a sci-fi movie to your mom.
Yeah,
you wouldn't tell her the entire plot points. I think it was you, Steve.
Lord of the Rings to your mom.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings to your mom.
Okay, I don't know elves. Well, okay, so I start with just some things that she could relate to. Explain Game of Thrones to someone who's never watched it. You might talk about the politics of it. You might, you knowing them and knowing what they're familiar with helps you kind of pull some things that will resonate with them and have them go, oh, okay, I don't understand everything about this, but I get enough that now I have a grounding for this character and can start working on that and developing it.
Yeah, usually what I'll try to do is also just use little touchstones. So for example, you have a race that's very complex, like say the Zerg or something like that. And while we're still telling them where the story's going, what they are, who they are, we'll also be like, so the Zergs, the giant alien bug creatures that you totally hate, and so that allows, at least for a quick moment for the person who doesn't have the chance to dive into 300 pages of wiki prior to starting their character, something to glom onto. Evil bugs. Yeah, got it. Starship Troopers or whatever, right? So something that allows them to shortcut.
Yeah, because I've been in sessions again with these new designers who don't know, and we live in this world, so it's in our DNA. But they're going on about the deep into lore, and I just watch the actors' eyes roll back in their head, and it's great. I dig it. But the actors, what do you do with that much information, right? And then they start to lose why they're there. So take all your small, medium, large and distill it down to like talking to your mom.
Well, Steve even mentioned keeping it pertinent is the important part, right? Because all this stuff, it is good for a Terran to know what the Zerg are because they're going to probably scream about them while they're dying. But in general, like that information is directly relevant. But not everything may be, right? So just because there are Zerg, there are Protoss, there are Xel'Naga, there are all these high-level lore things, the actor who's playing guy on the ranch may only need one of those things. So having just enough info to help them build the world and get where they need to, but without killing them with like the endless lore.
Yeah, it's little things. So if you have a line where you have the farmer and he's talking about how the demons ravaged the town across the way, you tell them things like, remember, it's the demon, like you hate these guys. So then, and then the actor is saying the line, they put that extra sting on demons, you know, those foul demons over the hill. It's those little things that you keep reinforcing throughout the session that will start paying off with the actor the farther you go into it.
Yep. And with that, though, from myself, and you guys know as well, you can do all your talking, but the really where the magic comes in is you talk to the actor and ask their thoughts. What are their take? What's their take on this character? Can they relate to this theme? I've got a great example of this. Have you guys seen the Reinhardt cinematic for Overwatch? Okay. He inadvertently, thank you, he kills his mentor, Baldric. So we're doing this, for those of sessions, it's cinematic, we do improv, it's a whole different animal. But I always start with a very 2-hour conversation about everything. And when you ask the actor their take on your character and what can happen, moments like this can happen. So we're going around the room. Darren, who plays Reinhardt's a very good friend of mine. So I thought I knew everything about him. We're sitting there about to start recording on this piece, and I say to Darren, hey, because I said that I thought the Baldric piece, the Reinhardt piece, is about regret. All the things in our life that we can beat ourselves up over, those things we've screwed up. And I said, let's all talk about things that regrets we have, small, medium, large. So I was open and honest. I told some dark secrets about my own life. It gets to Darren. Darren says to me out of nowhere, okay, remember Reinhardt accidentally kills his mentor. Darren says, I accidentally caused my mom's death. What? That shit got real quick. Because she was ill and he popped out to get lunch really quick. He was looking out for her and she choked while he was gone. But by asking that, and I was scared, I didn't want to make Darren fall apart, but when you ask an actor their own life stories, you get, for Darren to share that, so when you hear Reinhardt in that piece, he's channeling Darren losing his mother. So when you ask the actor these things, what you're going to get is gold. Because when I cast and when we bring actors in, with both of you, I'm not just casting a voice, hey, read these lines, play this character. I'm casting a human being with their own life story. So the more you give them your small, medium, large focus, the more you talk to them and then throw it all to them and go, what do you think about all this? And they kind of regurgitate it back to you in their own words. I mean, that's where the magic and the majesty comes in, easily.
Yeah, it's those moments when you're collaborating, because this is about collaboration. It's a three-way collaboration between the roles of designer and director and actor. And when you've given this stuff, you've given all these building blocks, all these starting points to the actor, and they process that and they channel it and they give you what they have, it can inspire you. It can make you think of things with this character that you didn't think of before.
Yeah,
and those are the eye-popping moments, the things that really energize me in these sessions.
Yeah, I can't tell you the number of times then we've recorded a character and then had the actor perform it and immediately been like, oh, we had this character wrong.
Totally
Hold on.
wrong.
Let me go redo this.
Right.
It's happened many times.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like to mention to designers, just because it's a little counterintuitive, but as a writer, you look at things from top down, right? You're looking at things like, this is the structure of the game, this character goes here, this is their purpose, and there's where they die, or whatever. So you look at it from that viewpoint. The actor, his job is actually sort of defiant. It's like, I'm looking at it from the other perspective, from the bottom up. I'm taking this character and seeing from my perspective your grand structure and then making that honest and true. So the interesting thing is the actor will often suddenly challenge what you've done in this overall thing because they're looking at it from a new viewpoint. Mm-hmm. And it is incredibly useful to get that information because you've suddenly added another brain into your development process, right? And so they have a thing where they get to connect to that individual character as opposed to the whole structure. Mm-hmm. And so they go, well, this character, are you sure they're going to do this? Or would they say it this way? Because they get to go, well, I'm mad about the thing you told me about now, and when I'm mad, I would say blank instead of blank. So it is an excellent tool to add to your development toolkit here.
And you know, you're asking the actor to be vulnerable in the session, right? You're asking them to give themselves over this performance. You, as a designer, have to make it, this is where you get vulnerable, because you've got to be willing to give up the assumptions you came in with. You've got to be willing to, again, do what's right for the character as opposed to what you thought was right when you wrote the lines or when you brought them into the session. So it's vulnerable, and you have to, if you give yourself over to that process, if you listen, if you're present and active, you'll get rewarded for it, because it just opens up so many avenues to you.
That's right. That's a great segue for our next slide, because when you're in session, the biggest thing you have to do is keep your ears and mind open, and job number one is to listen. And what are you listening for? We're going to listen for the practical. Is this line going to work for my player character or dungeon boss?
Totally. Does this line work in the moment or context of the game? Is it said to someone in the front row? Is it said to someone over by the exit? Those are totally different tonalities and strength of voice. So how is this line being used, and does it meet the qualifications of what I need it for in the game? Is it too long? Things like that.
And then the next one, so that's the practical, is listen for the unexpected. So kind of, Steve, what you're talking about in the vulnerability is you're going to go in knowing what you want, and it should be this kind of read, but don't let yourself get boxed in by that, because that's sometimes the things that you weren't expecting, much to both of their points, is where the true magic and the true truth happens. For myself as a director, the number one thing I want out of good reads is a truth and an honesty and a kind of a very frail human emotion to come through. And sometimes if you give the actors the space, Steve, I think the unexpected is where, for a while right now, we found amazing moments of things we didn't expect.
Oh, totally. And it only comes if you go in there willing to let that happen. Yeah, so many characters really come to life in that session, and it's really hard when if you've written a line or you've edited a line or you've kind of looked over this character before you came in, and you had this picture in your mind of how that line sounds when and you come in looking for this specific read, and if that's all you're chasing, then you'll end up getting it, but if you close yourself off to other possibilities, you're going to miss out on the magic. So let get what you want, but also let the actor have that freedom to play. And again, you'll hear things, if you're really listening, that convey the same intent of what you were going for, but did it in a whole new and exciting way.
Right. Steve and I just recorded an actress a couple weeks ago, and I don't even think she knew, but her voice, every once in a while, she'd squeak. What the fuck is happening right now? But we're like, oh my God, it made the character. And that character is going to be a fan favorite because she just has this squeak.
Yeah, so then we had a whole bunch of lines, and she's kind of going through the story, and she did that early on, and then we would listen to the takes for other lines, and we'd always go, the one that squeaked. Let's take that one. That's the one we want.
But we didn't know that. We didn't plan on having that character squeak. It just happened, and you got to be open for those moments. It's because again, the designer takes their clay, molds it, gives it to the director, I mold it, and I give it to her. So it's the collaborative process, and you've got to let them sculpt it. You can't, like they said, you can get the one you want, but don't box them in. You gave them those colors for a reason, so they could do this thing they do called acting. Yeah,
absolutely. It's that thing where that's what we're saying with the practical section is like knowing specifically with the things that you're looking for, like the context, the length, things like that, and then letting the unexpected happen in the bits that you don't have to control, because then you get a combo of both of the things. You get something that's perfectly usable and also amazingly memorable.
So with that, it's kind of redundant now, but make room for the actor's instinct. Be open. The hardest thing for me, if you need a read to be a certain way, that's fine. I completely respect that, but don't chase it. Don't get stuck on it. So we're kind of repeating ourselves, but don't stranglehold your reads. If you need that one you need, get it. But then let the actor have some room to play. Make space for the room. I love what you said, Steve. Be kind of vulnerable. Let yourself step back a little bit. You and I both want to own it, but as director and designer, we have to step back.
And when you've got this kind of trust and this magic that's flowing, and you're really listening and you're really letting things happen, that kind of active listening, that's a lot of work, right? Like a session like this is wearying. Like if you get to if I'm doing like 7-8 hours of sessions a day, like by the end of it, we're just drained. Right. And it's because we've given so much of ourselves over to it. It's not just hearing 3 things and going B. Like that. That's not really engaging with it. When you're really locked in and you're really trying to craft something, it's this kind of wonderful exhaustion that you only get from something that you poured your heart into.
Sure.
Yeah, and also just for clarity's sake, If you are, look, I make a game about nostalgia. I understand chasing nostalgia and trying to chase down nostalgic reads. So, for example, if you want jacked up and good to go, like it needs to be a very specific thing, right? So, because I'm looking for that. But the key is get that line, get it down. Also, be open, see if maybe there's a new read that's more interesting, and then in general, that doesn't mean you have to force that particular read that you just did all the way across the character, right? Like, it can be one
Choose
of
your
the
moments.
things, and then the other 299 lines are more open for things.
Very good point. Very good point. So next, you're in session. You've done all your homework. You've talked. You've done all that. And now the actor starts recording. And this is an important slide for me because, like I said earlier, some designers, the new ones that I work with, hey, that was great. I turn to them, hey, designer, what do you think? Yeah, it's fine. It's good. I'm like, oh, that's saying it's fine to me. Like when a woman asks a man, how do I look? Nobody should say fine because you're going to get murdered. So don't say fine. Don't say fine. That just like, why do you hate it for? So it's hard when they say fine. Tell me if you like it. If you don't like it, tell me. I think some designers who are new to it are fearful, to be honest. That's what I want to talk about. So when you are there with a director or somebody functioning as a director, only give that feedback to the director. Actors are very vulnerable and very frail in session because they're giving their soul. So, if it's just you and them, that's a different talk, but you've got to be as careful as possible because they're basically standing there completely naked, giving you their soul. So it's good to keep them in that positive bubble and only give your feedback to the director. I think that's because it's my job to interpret what you want and talk to them in a way that makes sense to them.
Yeah, the way we build this in ours, and that's why I was stressing out the multiple roles, is because someone who has direct feedback of like, okay, that's not loud enough nearly or whatever.
I hate it, it's terrible.
Or even just simply being like, that didn't work at all. It just, what the hell? Allowing that to have a conversation with someone else to then drill down to what the actual beat that you're trying to get across allows it then to be filtered to the actor in a way that's much more actionable.
Right.
Because the concern is if you are going off raw emotion, just going like, it fucking sucks, do it again. You have a chance of just having an actor go wild, trying to like appease you, but you also don't necessarily know what you want either. And so this session can start spiraling out of control. You can get tons of line and just burn your actor out in general. Yeah.
And they'll be crushed. I mean,
and it sucks. It's a hard thing to do,
Well, and one of the reasons actors love Andrea so much is that we have the sidebars and we talk about like, yeah, that line didn't work. I'm not feeling the emotion there. We'll come back and she'll be like, that was lovely. That performance was great.
So
Super
good.
job. We just
So
want to
good.
try one other
You guys
thing
are
with this.
But one more thing.
Yeah, but just, just chasing a color. We had this crazy idea. All these kinds of things that really do help the actor say, you want to bolster them up and say, man, that was awesome. You're really doing great with this. Hey, let's try something else.
Yeah.
Framing it that way will help them go, okay, they were listening to me. They're appreciating what I'm doing. We're just going to try some new things.
Sure. Because the truth is, even if you're not getting what you want, they are doing great because they're trying. Right? They are trying to get it for you. So even if you're like, that fucking sucks, I hate it, which you guys do all the time. Yeah. Just kidding. They're
Constantly.
Constantly.
I don't use potty words.
But the actor is trying, so that's why it is good to keep it positive with them because they're doing the best they can, man. They don't know. This is some hard, especially our fantasy games. This is some crazy shit. I get a mouthless space alien attacking. What does that even mean? So they're trying. So only give it to the director if you can. Next, feel free to ask for numerous takes. Again, I think these new designers think that, with our sessions we get 3 reads. I feel like they think, oh, I guess it's fine, I'll take A. No, if you're not happy, I'm there as a director to get what you want. The actor's there to please you. So tell us, feel free to chase things, feel free to try things. It's okay to get numerous takes because sometimes the first read, the actor's just getting warmed up, so give them some space to find it. Lastly, chase inspiration, explore possibility. Yeah. Even if you get what you want, but you go, hey, that squeak she was doing, I really dig it. Can we move more in that direction? Mm-hmm. So don't be afraid to get lots of takes, try different things. I mean, don't get lots of takes just to do it because we don't want to hurt the actor. But if you've got ideas and it makes sense, that's your time to play. The clay is right there waiting for you to make something with it.
Yeah, totally. I can't, countless times we've been doing like, wait, I got an idea. What if she's bored? And then immediately it's like, oh, that's hilarious. That's a way better version. Right. So allowing that inspiration to strike is super important. And just in general, like when you are allowing those things to happen and not just sitting there, like you not just taking the 1, 2, and 3, like you get way more opportunity. And in general, you also can take one that you think is safe and then get an alternate. I cannot tell you how many times where I've been like, this is the funniest thing I've ever heard. it will not work in the game, but I want it, and give me another one that's safe, and we'll see what happens. And sometimes that one that I thought was amazing and could never work will totally work.
It makes it
other times, I'm totally right, and I'm glad I got that safety line. But you can always just be like, hey, give me both, and make that choice later. See what actually happens in your game.
Right.
But yeah, just in general, it's that like allow all this stuff to happen, but also don't like kill your actor with a million takes. Do know what you're getting.
Yeah.
Right.
I think one thing I always say is that you've got like X amount of poker chips with your actors. Don't spend them all chasing things. You mean because they're going to get blown out. They're going to get tired. So don't go crazy. But do what makes sense for you. Great. So our next thing I want to talk briefly about is line reads. This is kind of important to me because it's a sticking point with actors. Line reads, I'm sure all of you know, but just in case you don't, it's when you read the line how you think it should be said. That is dangerous territory. So as a director, if you do have a way, sometimes there's lines that you guys need to hear a certain way, only give that to your director or the person functioning as that. Do not give it to the talent, because what happens, and we know this sometimes, is they'll hear what you want, that'll get in their brain, and they're not going to let go of it, because now they're trying to please you, and they're going to be stuck on doing this ridiculous line read. I mean, have you guys ever YouTubed Shatner in a session where somebody gives them a line read, and it all just goes straight to hell in a handbasket? It's a great example of don't do that. And then also, if you give a line read, they're just going to be mimicking you. They're not finding their own heart and emotion in it. And oh, sorry, Steve. And one thing, be aware of it, because sometimes I get designers on the phone, and they are so excited talking about it, they do the line. They don't mean to. They just say it really quick, but the actor hears it. So just be cognizant of it. If it slips out, it's fine, but really, really try not to, because that's really going to start boxing your actor in. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, that read that's in your head is, again, you can't help but come in with that. Like it's there somewhere because you wrote the line or you edited the line, whatever it is. But really, line reads can be handcuffs, not only for the actor but for you as well. Because if you're so locked in on that one thing, and when it could be something else, because again, sometimes it does need to be said a specific way. But whenever possible, get rid of those handcuffs and just explore the ideas and the possibilities.
Okay, great. We've got 15 minutes left, a couple more slides, so hopefully we'll finish up with a little bit of Q&A, but know that we're trying to get through this as quick as we can. So next, this is a script that these guys wanted to put in here, and this was fine-tuning the script. Use the session to polish your script. Don't be bound to it. I'm going to hand this to you guys completely because this is your world.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to think of the VO session as the final barrier for script tuning. The truth of it is you will probably have done a billion passes prior to getting into a VO booth. That's totally true. But when something comes alive, you suddenly have two things you're looking for in particular. One is how that individual actor is saying the lines. Some actors cannot say certain word combinations. You end up having to change things on the fly. Another thing is just, oh man, what I wrote was bad. That happens too. And,
not to me, but...
Okay, that happens to me. But in general, something where it's like, oh wait, actually just screaming no is like 10,000 times more honest, or whatever it is. So in general, I like to say here, I like to think of the script as the launching pad. We've done everything we can to make it as awesome as possible, and then let the actor take some inspiration and go for it from there. Now you always have the safety net of the thing you've built forever if you need to go back to it, but it also gives them something to bounce off of and do something more interesting or more honest.
And another case is, so you've hired the actor for a specific reason, maybe a certain sound of their voice, maybe an accent. So a lot of times you might have a new accent in the game, something you're not familiar with, a way you haven't written, and whether it's how does a dwarf speak Scottish? How do I write that? Or, whatever it is. If you have someone who is actually familiar with that speech pattern, you can go into the session and say, I wrote these lines straight, but I want you to do it in your Scottish accent as if you were speaking this. So ignore the particulars of the words and just say it like you would if you were a person in Scotland. And that can super inform how to rewrite that line. Maybe you move some words around, maybe you shorten certain things, different contractions in that speech pattern, and it will help you then take that example and put it, use that as a template to change the other lines in your script for other characters. And now you understand that accent. Now you can write it. But it only happened because you drew that experience from this actor.
Yeah.
Right. Because you guys always tell me all the time, you can do all the writing you want, but when you hear it spoken, it suddenly is a whole different life. So as you're saying, this is a time to change, add, delete, modify whatever you want to do.
Yeah, and the truth is just, it's really like, don't be shackled and die to a line that just isn't working.
Right.
And I've seen it happen so many times where the director and the actor are both like, we can't figure out what's wrong, and I'm over there going, it's wrong because the words are wrong, and you know it, and you can tweak it right there.
Right. Great. So yeah, perfect. So what? The most important ingredient, all three of us have talked extensively about this, the most important ingredient that we need from you as a game designer in session is to be present. You are the best asset. I've studied theater directing for a long time now, and my mentor always tells me, as a director, I do script analysis, I do extensive preparation, all my notes, copious amounts of paperwork that I fill out my ideas. I do it all, and then when I walk into the studio, I throw it away. It's there in the back of my mind, in my back pocket if I need any of my work, but be present. You only do all that work so you can throw it away and be in the moment with your team. No texting, no watching cat videos, no taking a nap. This has all happened in session. People have fallen asleep during sessions, which makes me crazy. But you've got to be present. The three of us, that sandbox, I've got the bucket, you got the shovel, you got the water, let's do it. So even if you ignore nothing, if you ignore everything in this, what we've talked about so far, just be there in the moment. The fact that any of us are on this journey making video games and we get to work with actors, how lucky are we? So all you really have to do is be present and just be there and enjoy and savor that time.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys want to speak more to this? I think that's our jam, isn't
Well,
it?
I'd say it's just the whole session is a constant active listening, both filtering it through what is going to happen in the game. Is it good? Are you liking it? Are you having fun?
Right.
All these things. And so there's never a moment you shouldn't be checked in, even if it's like the most boring of systemic dialogue and it's just go there and destroy the thing.
Red team wins.
It happens, yeah. But for every single one, you're focusing it down and understanding will this work? Is this the right line for the game?
Yeah, for me, the session is the reward, right? You've spent all that time at your desk, struggling over these words, finding just the right adjective for angry or for revenge, like whatever it is. You've got all these things. You've worked it all out. You've studied. You've come in, and now you get to reap the rewards of this. So you get to let that magic wash over you. So have fun with it. Engage with it.
Yeah.
Embrace it, because this is the time when stuff comes to life, and this is what's going to energize your game. It's going to make people's ears pop. It's going to give them all that fun stuff to glom onto.
Yep.
It's very rewarding.
Yeah, all the programming, all the artwork, all the this, all the design, all of it comes together with a voice, And Steve, when we were prepping on this, and he kind of said this earlier, if you're not exhausted by the end of the day, you're not doing it right. Because if you're present and listening and at 11 the whole day, we are exhausted. I mean, I go home, I got nothing left. It's me, vodka, and Netflix, and that's it. It really, because it's like you're, what I feel like? It's like you're holding a weight all day long, right? So, it's an emotional journey.
Yeah, I like to say you should be listening so hard you can't even listen to anything else afterwards. You're just like, I'm turning off the radio and I'm done.
Yeah,
It's good.
that's why I tell my spouse, I'm sorry I can't hear you because I've been with orcs all day. So yeah, just be you. So if you ignore every slide, just be you. Just be there and have fun. So with that, my last slide, the most important ingredient, kind of closing of everything we just said, is literally have fun. Build the sandcastles, let your characters explode, and truly, 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 I've given these talks a couple of times now, and there's been games that have been released with VO that's fallen flat. The truth is, the more you put into it, the more steps of these that you do, the more you're going to get out of it. I mean, I think we all know the more we do, the better it is. So
Absolutely.
that's it. So guys, that's our talk. We've got 10 minutes left for any Q&A. Anybody want to come up to the mic and talk,
There's a
please?
microphone right there.
Yes, right there. Thank you. Thank you. And a reminder, thank you guys. We're so happy to be here. As a quick reminder, if you filled that survey, let us know if you liked it, if you hated it. We just want to hopefully got something out of it.
I mean,
So thank you.
this session, a lot of that was born out of feedback from previous sessions.
Yep.
So please send your
Tell us what you got. We can take it all.
Yeah.
But make it positive and make me happy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Whatever you want, as long as it makes her happy.
Tell me I'm amazing. Right? I'm kidding. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks for all the applicable advice. I work as a writer and designer on a lot of branching projects. And one thing I've struggled with in the past is sort of bringing my actors along for the many, many possibilities of the way the story can go.
Yeah.
And I often find myself saying, okay, so for this line, this is what happened, but this didn't happen. This line we just read is not a thing you know
That's
now.
so
And it's like, and I know it and I have it all in my head, but sometimes I find difficulty communicating that to an actor and taking them through all that. So I was wondering if you have any advice for working on branching projects
so hard.
and how to sort of bring an actor along for that journey to make sure that they're giving a read that's authentic to every possible way the story can go.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't think a lot of us have done branching products ourselves, but like I've talked with people who have. One of the things I'd probably recommend is focusing on sections, because one of the key things is we also have you export your script and it looks like madness, right? Because it goes across an entire game. So it's immediately going to be a thing where you're the only person who's truly able to piece this in there together. That's why you're in the session. But what I would probably do is try to build chunks, even if you're just focusing down like, okay, this is my first interaction and let's just explore it through it. That way you can build some sort of consistency throughout the product. So my thought would be like, okay, this first chunk, this is always like early in the story where they're not sure of themselves, and here's a bunch of different ways that these lines can happen, but at least you know that that's still in the phase where the character's unsure about themselves.
Right.
And then as you move to the next chunk, you have a little bit more of like, okay, now they're a little bit stronger or whatever. So then at least you're keeping your answers in a bucket. The truth is you're gonna end up recording a million things, and you are gonna be the only person who has the key to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think since actors are used to working in scenes, if you paint it as a scene with this is what's going on in these lines, they can relate to that and give you that performance, and then give them a reset,
Right.
something that
Sure.
kind of resets things, and say, okay, now we're going to do a different scene, similar thing, but this is what happens. It'll help them come.
I think from the director's perspective, I'd make it clear to them, explain branching to them, because sometimes they don't know and go, I know it's going to make you feel schizophrenic, but please understand that your character can go in multiple directions. If you just give them that baseline so they understand versus like, what the fuck is going on with this game? But let them know how it works in simple terms.
So it's like Clue.
Yeah.
And well,
Yeah,
you know, that's
right.
something they could relate to. This time, it's this scenario
Yeah,
playing out.
it's Colonel
Oh,
Mustard,
okay, it's like
right.
Clue. It's a different series of events.
Right. And one phrase that I use a lot is as if. So if it's a branching, now it says if your character just won the lottery. Okay, now we're going to turn right. Your character just didn't win the lottery. You know, just kind of little simple little nuggets of information. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thank you
All
so
right,
much.
Cool, thank you. Hello.
Hi. So you'd kind of mentioned for just some of the assets you should bring to help your actors out, like either animations or like gameplay footage. I was just curious, you'd also then mentioned that sometimes the performances will kind of redefine what you've been thinking about those actions that they're trying to provide voice lines for. So where do you how do you balance that if the stuff you've already provided is now being redefined by their performance?
So usually, at least on my side, when that's happened to me, it's very rarely been affected the animation or the art. Usually it's mostly just my writing, so it's my side that I have to just set in a fire, and I'm kind of used to that anyways. So for that a bit, it was like, okay, we've had several times where this has occurred, and you're like, oh, this guy brought out such a unique thing. What I've done usually is then, since it's very rare unless they added like a tick or something that is like extremely obvious. Most of the time the animations and stuff will line up, but the writing might not, and it's then actually just finding the beats through the story and getting the re-records you need. Usually I would do that, like, okay, here's most of the stuff, it did evolve, let me go back, listen to the with a new character in mind, these 4 are off, final session covers those 4. So in general, I would just build it into the process with a little bit of like wiggle room. We tend to have a little wiggle room, period, because someone made the fire blue or something. So yeah.
Did you mean by that if an actor does something different than what we've kind of given? Here's the assets of what this race does, and they're doing something a little different. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, just you like it so much that it's like, wow, we do want to go that way.
Well, I also think too it's fun. We have Tauren in World of Warcraft, which are like noble American Indians. This one actor came in. I thought it sucked. I don't know if it was with you, Steve. He did like a gangster soprano version of this. I'm like, what the fuck is that? I thought it was strange, but we liked it. We kept it in, and I was pushing for a recast, and the fans love it. Yeah. So I don't know. Sometimes I guess I try not to be too rigid, because sometimes even though, Steve, we've had these moments where even though it's different, we kind of dig it because it's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, again, looking for those opportunities.
Yeah.
It rarely, in our case, makes us go back and change an entire race or something like that. But like in the case of the squeaky voice, it did help us inform that, you know, because it was a new race at the time. And
because if it's a new race, they're all going to have different things. So I say embrace the kookiness, man. I dig it. So cool. Awesome. Thanks. Hi.
Hi. Thank you, guys. This is a very good presentation. I'm wondering if you're working with characters who are going to be hyper stylized, like a demonic creature or like a broken AI or something. Does that change any of these approaches in the recording session? Like, do you try to get whoever's in charge of voice design involved? Would you ask the actor, like, could you lean into your plosives for this effect or something like that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Actually, having done a lot of voicey characters like that, what we'll usually do is that'll be a lot of the intro conversation that we discussed. Just going through like, hey, this is an AI, and you have a quirk where you like go nuts, or well, you lose your programming, or whatever the thing is. I would go through that with the actor, and then you can actually just go, hey, run the first page and let's figure it out real fast and see like what would you do? Oh, that didn't work. Could you do that again real fast? Maybe try making your S's longer or something like that. Going through it with them in that first page and then going into the recording helps. Another thing to do is, if you can, and not everyone can, bringing the process live into Pro Tools can very commonly affect your performance quite a bit. So we had things like mountain giants, I believe. It was cool when a guy was going, oh, I'm a mountain giant, right? Like that was fine. But the second he got the performance, he's like, oh,
But you could hear it.
yeah, and it was amazing because it was actually going live. So not everyone can bring their Pro Tools sessions in, but if you can, it's an extra tool.
And I think, Steve, with us, with WoW, to your point, we just talk a lot with them. And give them all the colors and let them reinterpret our demon crazy bullshit.
Well, yeah, like we had we especially have a lot of freedom with some of our raid bosses because they're kind of like self-contained. They're in this one place, and you only meet them once. So we have a situation where there's this magical construct who's kind of a robot, and he's kind of broken in his head, and he really doesn't like it when there's messes on the floors. He's really fussy, and so the actor like glommed, okay, got it, and just started riffing on stuff and did this super fussy robot accent, like but British and stuff. And we're just like, yeah, just do that. Like again, just make it memorable, make it fun and super exciting, because the players are going to engage with it here, and then they're going to move on to something else. So in those cases, it's okay to be bombastic and big because you're not married to it everywhere in the game.
I think the point is to try not to micromanage it too much. Give them the fun stuff, but let them fill in the in-between. So we have about 1 minute left, so if we don't get to all you guys, we can meet you over here and answer your questions. So we'll take one more question here, maybe.
Hi, fantastic talk.
Thank you.
I want to ask about when you have conflicts with casting decisions between like direction and design or writing.
All that matters is what I want. So there's that.
So I was going to ask, what do you think causes them, and how do you resolve these without causing a civil war?
You know, it's hard because, I've gone through this. I think with Heroes, with characters already established, but Steve and I go through this, and I think from my perspective, Steve, you can talk about it. We just talk. We go back and forth. But for me, I tend to go for people that might not be the exact voice, but if we get the acting that we want and the emotions that we want. Because voices, to me, I'm not stuck on. What I do chase is the heart of the character. And then Steve and I arm wrestle, but I think we just hash it out as to what's important.
Yeah, you get inundated with auditions for stuff, and then you filter it down to maybe these are my 15 favorites. Here, check these out. Tell me what you think of these.
Right.
And again, I listen to it. I listen for the practical. Do they sound like an orc? Do they sound like an angry orc? And then, because a lot of people can do the gruff voice, now who's really selling the emotion of there? When they're saying, for the Horde! Like, I really want them to feel it. Like, if they're just doing, for the Horde. Like, I'm not, no. So it's that combination. And then I don't just send her back a list of names. I like to bum, bum, bum. I say, here's the name. I liked it because of this. But, the other actor, I liked this aspect of it. And then you can kind of take those and filter it and go, okay, I'm listening to the performance, all that kind of stuff. And then together we come to consensus.
We kind of compromise.
Yeah.
So we really just work as a team and kind of figure it out together.
And I guess I'll give a I'm sorry to conflate everybody and hold you here. Real quick, we've had those times where you've cast somebody and it's like the team is going like, well, no, that didn't work. Sorry. It happens. But in general, what we'll do is we'll try to take that moment, figure out what people don't like about it. Sometimes I'll even play with the audio. Like we'll go through processes with the character, see what we can do. If we can, tweak it this way, tweak it that way. What are we trying to express it to? Then we take it back to the casting and go like, hey, we did everything in the world under the sun. We have to recast. In that scenario, I'd bring her the thing. It's like, here's where we went with it. And immediately she'd be like, I have a new idea. And we'd go and get a new casting and move forward. It happens sometimes. You hope to get it right the first time, but...
But still, it's always up to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. And make sure to
The survey.
send out the surveys.
5 stars.